Thank you very much. And good morning, or selamat pagi, should we say. Do other panelists going to join me on stage, or I'm going to stand by myself? Come on, Jack. And where's Adit? He's here in the room someplace, hopefully. Alfonso. Has Adit arrived, or is he still sitting in the traffic queue? In the sustainable traffic queue, should we say. I actually, yesterday, I'm a train lover, if I can use that expression, and yesterday when I came into Jakarta, I took the train, because trying to be sustainable. But then it kind of goes pear-shaped when you then get to the other end, and then you spend probably longer in the taxi than you do actually in the airplane getting to the hotel. So that kind of is it in a nutshell. So we're going to talk a bit about sustainability and the challenges that we are all facing and what we're doing. So I just want to set the scene, if I can get this going to the first slide, please, and really explore with distinguished hoteliers the challenges that we've all got and what's happening. And it's called Strategies to Operate Hotels Sustainably Without Compromising on Service Quality, because that's definitely a big topic around the world today. So I thought of going a couple of steps back and talking a bit about, before we get going, about sustainable tourism. And most of us will understand that sustainable tourism is ultimately all about trying to minimize your footprint in where you are. And the United Nations came out with this statement basically recently, or some years ago. And it's pretty much something that still holds true. And it says basically it covers the total tourism experience. So we as humans, when we travel, we do certain things. Some of you will sometimes pay the tax on the airplane to donate to a forest. There's a variety of things that can be done. We know tourism is a massive industry, and it will continue, hopefully. We employ a lot of people, and a lot of us are directly affected of it every single day. So when we look at it, there's a big community at large. And the United Nations came up with a number of goals that they envisioned some years ago. We know that sustainable tourism will lead to a sustainable economy. We understand that all. But the key thing is that we don't want to look at this sort of picture. And there's lots of efforts. And only last week did Sean, who's sitting in the back row, the chairman of the Bali Hotel, say, hey, did I join Sean in... You didn't jump in the river, but a few of us jumped in the river, and we set up a barrier. And only yesterday did we see the picture of the barrier, and it's full of plastic already. So this picture is being repeatedly happening in many rivers across Indonesia and across the world, and it's something that we definitely have to stop. A key part of it is the responsible traveler. And so my example of actually jumping on a train, and I always use Copenhagen, where I grew up, in Denmark, as an example of an amazing society that has really created a city where it's easy to get around in. And many European cities are following that. And that's something that we just are going to have to go down the track in Asia. It says here, according to Booking.com, that 87% of travelers want to do sustainably, want to travel sustainably. But actually, 48% indicate that they rarely do. And that's sadly the case, that we do, but we don't always walk the talk. And that's something that's got to change. And we, as hoteliers, have to change. Quite a number of years ago, I went to visit this wonderful location in Langkawi called the Datai. And the Datai have something called the Datai Pledge. And it's a wonderful, wonderful system that they've built up. And they've really created this whole concept when you visit that everything is about sustainability. It's so good today that when you actually go to the Datai, there is no rubbish on site. So that when the truck arrives, then actually there's nothing to take away. So now they actually take garbage to the Datai that they then help recycle and help for the local community. There's a system called, Cambridge University started some years ago, a conversation called Rewiring the Economy. And it's ultimately about how do we change. It's something that's going to take time, but it's something that is, I did the course some years ago, and it really sparked my interest because ultimately it says here, it's about, the people, the planet, prosperity, peace. How do we get all these systems to work together. And the rewiring of the economy presses a lot of questions and a lot of interesting questions. The key one is, how do we change the practices and how do we actually change to what we do? And scholars back in 2016 identified it. So it's not something that's new, but it's now becoming even more pressing that we all need to get away from this picture and that we need to really start thinking. But it starts at the base. It starts in education, educating young people, but also it starts to change habits. So when we look at what we do in hotels, there's lots of things. I mean, you're talking the light bulbs, you're talking a whole range of things that you can do in a hotel, from, you know, not using laundry or, let's say, friendly detergent, educating staff. There's a whole measures that you can take on, but it really comes down to the community, and it comes down to guests accepting how we work. So once again, welcome to Strategies to Operate Hotels in a Sustainable Way. And the first gentleman I'm going to talk to, I'm going to ask to talk a bit about how they operate, is Jack. And Jack and I have known each other for some time. We both come from a similar hotel school. So Jack, if I can give you the floor, and hopefully your microphone's working, and hopefully Adit will turn up at some point in the conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. If we can go to the Jack slide, thank you.
Okay. Do I have a clicker? Sorry. Hi, good morning, everybody. I'm Jack. I heads up the Mandala Group of Business in Indonesia. We're currently in Singapore, Niseko, and Bali. Niseko is currently a pop-up club for our members-based business. Singapore is our HQ, so I'm going to just flick through this very quickly. So recently we struck a partnership with Mandarin Oriental in Singapore, so we pretty much run the club in Mandarin Oriental, Singapore. So gone are the boring days of business lounge where the guests would pick up their newspaper and watch CNN and eat their cereal. Now that club is lively and, you know, with full of programming from Mandala. Okay, this is our Niseko pop-up, which started in December and finish up in March, and then we'll repeat again at the end of this year for the next winter season. And this is our Bali club, soon to open sometime this year. Okay, we also have a portion of a business that runs villa. So we manage villa, a bit like HMA for hotels. Primarily our villas are owned by members. We design, we construct, we manage. Okay, just some of the look of our villa. Ulu Cliff House is a beach club up in Bingin, Uluwatu. So the likes of Savaya, El Cabron, and so on, so we are up there. This one is open for public. Okay. So I think in terms of sustainability, I want to close my introduction with a Bruce Lee quote. Remember, you're expressing the technique, not actually doing it. So we'll discuss more about that, John.
Okay. And are you actively working in terms, we were talking yesterday a bit about the developments that you've got. How is the building techniques, the whole mode of design changing with sustainability coming into the conversation?
Sure. So I guess in design and construction of hospitality business, whether it's hotel or villa, usually you have the shareholder, the owner, very visionary, wants to build something beautiful, appoint a design company, and that's pretty much it. Maybe there is consultation with the ops. For us, we recently appointed Chief Sustainability in the company.
Very good.
It's a she started with us a few months ago, so her input is high priority in the design stage. We also have an in-house design team that goes back and forth with, making sure that we tick as many boxes as we can. And then we go into the selection process of suppliers, of who is more eco-friendly than others.
Okay, thank you. We'll come back to that. Alfonso, if I could give you the floor to talk a bit about all the way from, you haven't come in this morning from Labuan Bajo,
Yeah,
but you have a great
Sure,
project down there, so maybe Alfonso can tell us a bit about what you're doing.
Yeah.
Have we got Alfonso's slides? Here we go.
Okay, so good morning, everyone. So thank you for the opportunity. I mean, back again from last year. Now, thank you, HIG, for the invitation. So, we are Flores Prosperindo. We develop our project in Labuan Bajo and Tanamori, around 246 hectare lands that we want to develop a world-class, as a world-class sustainable, same theme, sustainable tourism destination. So, we had, I mean, with ITDC as our partner, we had finished our first target to provide the convention center for 1,000 pax, and then the beach club and the jetty. We are in progress now to develop around 50 units exclusive villa, and then 70 pods villa, so total 120 units. So interesting when we discuss about sustainability, because from the beginning that we realized that our location very close with the Komodo National Park, I mean, one of the UNESCO World Heritage. So this is very important for us, how we plan from the beginning that we could balance between the nature and then with our vision, of course. So you could see this is the sample that the convention looks like a bridge. So this bridge, I mean this building connecting the two hills. So we didn't make many cut and fill works, because once again we want to utilize the nature. So this is something that we had done. And then in terms of the sustainability, honestly we got financing from Australia. I mean, directly from DFAT, Department for Foreign Affairs and Trade of Australia. So PwC lead the consultant. I think Ross also become one of the consortium. He's there. He's here also. And then revert to the GSTC, the Global Sustainable Tourism Council. I think maybe there's a little different. I mean, maybe John used 4 pillars, but refer to GSTC, we put 4 pillars in terms of the sustainability implementation. So there will be a sustainable management, sustainable socioeconomics, and then cultural, and of course the last one, the environment. So this is something that I think very important, and we could discuss more about this. And then, if you don't mind, we just want to see. We are very focused in environmental, because, of course, we are very close with the UNESCO World Heritage. We have big responsibility. I mean, for the Komodo dragon and all of the environment and the surrounding. We are become the buffer zone of that heritage or the conservation. So I think we could discuss more about cost efficiency and quality. John, I think that's all from me first.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if has Adit arrived? Or is he still stuck in the traffic? So let me just explain a bit about where I come from on a day-to-day basis, if mine's going to work. No, sorry. Get back to the slides. Sorry. So my day job is that I manage a place in Bali called 5 Elements Retreat, and it was founded back in 2010. If I could just get on to the slides. It was founded in 2010, and the founders, when they created the project, their whole vision was to create really a sustainable retreat in the sense of building materials, in a sense of its footprint. And have we got to... Have you got to the slides? Here we go. I'll quickly run it forward. So their whole concept was really to take a small piece of land I'll just go up, in Bali, in the same village where John Hardy comes from, so the jewellery. And what they did was basically to look at employees, everything that really was about the property. So this is basically the land and where we operate. So as you can see, we sit in a jungle in many ways, right on the Ayung River. And the whole place, how it was designed out of bamboo, which has its contradictions when you talk about sustainable living and sustainable materials, because bamboo, of course, is an amazing material that regrows very easily. But it also has its challenges. Sean, who is sitting in the back, who I introduced before, comes from Southern Africa. And we see what termites do in Southern Africa. Amazing, amazing what termites can do. But the challenge with them also is that they love bamboo. And that's their breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So you also kind of have to look at these buildings and say, how sustainable is it to just keep rebuilding? And alang-alang, that of course is often used and is used in a lot of the project. So a lot of these questions become also very much part of that conversation that you have in sustainability. So we took I've got to come over here, we took a visionary approach that basically said the goal was to continuously evolve the hospitality operations. So everything we do, we look at how do we operate, how do we go beyond sustainability, but how do we look at our humans? So 70 to 80% of our staff all live locally. So when we talk about carbon footprint in terms of getting to work, sadly, as we know in Bali, everybody loves to jump on a motorbike. And staff in the village will even on a 2-minute drive jump on their motorbike. So I tease them a bit, but I actually do it to the sense of questioning why you're not walking, which would be healthier for you. But more importantly, you're not using a motorbike and creating pollution. And so it's very much about, I suppose, pushing people to actually change their habits, and that's the key message. So one of the things that we follow is the Trihita Karana approach, so being good to God, nature, and humans. And we give 0.5% of revenues to charitable donations, to charitable companies. So we support a project up in the Kintamani, we support a number of orphanages. And Jack, who worked for Six Senses some years ago, you do the same. I mean, they used to do the same there with 0.5%. And I'm very lucky. Is I don't really have a sustainable department. I have a group of people who do it, and the main one actually is my chief accountant, the financial controller. And Arthur loves it. He was your traditional financial controller and then really started embracing sustainability. And it's actually been a game changer having the financial controller who's part of leading it, because he actually looks long-term and says, what can we do? What do we change? So it's really about collaborating with like-minded holders. And as I explained, the Trihita Karana philosophy is kind of what guides us and helps us make decisions on, do we do this or do we do that? And so when I often talk about sustainability in buildings, I go, and the Dane comes up in me saying, well, we can do this smarter and we can do this better. And so it's really become a bit of a passion, and it's also become something that we all as a group have to follow. This is me with the Bali Children's Project, and where we donate money. And that helps change lives. And it really helps a better livelihood for little Gusti, who's standing here in the middle. So she's sponsored through to basically finish her education. She wanted to work in a hotel, so that was one of the reasons we decided to sponsor her. But it's such a wonderful organization and what they do. So things that we look at, and there are lots of great examples. And I noticed here in this hotel that in the rooms, there's no more plastic bottles. This is a picture taken on the left side, is a picture taken at the Hyatt in Sanur, where Hervé, the GM, has really been very vocal on it, has instigated lots of great examples. Bali has something called a potato head. Potato head as a concept is amazing. They've done a huge amount of work on it and on sustainable measures. Kevin from Conrad, he has this on his trolleys. So he's really educating staff from the beginning to really talk about the planet, to really basically make those changes. And the more we do that, the more we educate staff, that align staff, the more we start taking the message. And it was something that when we started the project in Bali, that became the key point of really taking an educational sense, because the more you educate people, and there's a great slogan on the back, the backbone of every good society is healthy education. And it's not just referring to what Chef Tantra is doing of serving food and helping people educate in terms of food-wise, but it's really educating from a base. We have all got children. So we're all got to leave the planet in some sense, in a good way. And what we're doing at the moment is not a healthy way we're going forward. So we have to change our ways. And we have to change guests' habit. And we talked a bit about yesterday. Barry is sitting in the back there. And Barry runs a hotel in Guinea, correct? It's in Guinea. And we had the conversation about, having an outdoor shower. And guests basically complaining that there was an animal. And I said to Barry, it's really about, I said to the gentleman in the presentation, it's really about educating the people who are your guest. Because if they come to a hotel and that's one of your concepts, well then, it's better you tell them. If you don't tell them in advance, then they'll complain about it, that they saw, a lizard or they saw an animal. So it's a lot about. We talked a bit about, earlier I mentioned the Datai Pledge. So this is what the Datai Pledge actually saved over some years. So, 76,000 bottles were saved from landfill, 22 tons of fertilizer, 298 kilos of herbs. So lots of savings were created at the Datai in Langkawi. And it's an amazing project. If you go to Malaysia and you happen to go to Langkawi, go and see Remy, who runs their program. It's fantastic what they do. And it's a shining example of what can be done. This is our garden that we created in 2022. So this is a 3,700 square meter garden that sits in the middle of the resort and basically practices what we preach. It basically grows a lot of the vegetables, and for the community runs the garden, and we use a lot of the vegetables, the fruits, the herbs, the spices from a both spa to spa concept and from a food concept wise. And the lake is filled up pretty naturally from the water. We use a subak system, so we don't have to bring in water to make it happen. But it's really about taking a holistic, sustainable wellness approach, because that holistic approach gives you then the where you're going in the future. So I'll sit down and we'll have a conversation, and maybe Adit will turn up. Jack, if I can ask you the question, how are you helping? How are you making staff aware of efforts? I mean, you've done something which I'm going to see a show of hands. How many of you in your operations have a sustainable department? One. And how many people run the department? Good. You. So you've got a sustainable. Anybody else? Oh, we've got one more here. You got a person who runs your sustainable the area. And what type of hotel have you got? What have you got, a hotel, or what operation have you? And you've got one person running. Is that their exclusive job? But they have other jobs, yeah? So in your area where you've got 4, that's their key job? Okay, good. So that's a very important point, because when we load the job of being a sustainable champion onto somebody else, then actually it just becomes, oh God, there's another job for me. Where actually when you designate somebody who has so we instead of actually having a department, what we did, we set up a group, and the engineer is one of the main drivers of it, together with Pak Ketut, who runs the garden. So in that sense, there's constant cooperation, and Arthur, the financial controller, he then basically helps us manage it, because the main thing the owners want to know is, where's the money gone? What balance sheet have you put it into? That was their main question. Actually, they weren't worried about what you do. They were more worried about the balance sheet. So Jack, going back to the question, so how does she operate, the lady who's running your sustainable department?
Yeah, I mean, most of her time is focused on training, talks, and she does talks to our members in Singapore too. And she set up projects, we execute it. But I think I have to, going back to your business model, having your financial controller as the lead of this, I think is great, because sustainability needs some cost, needs some funding, and if you don't have a specific department running it, I think it's very clever to have the finance guy to actually lead it, because sometimes it gets stuck and bogged down into approval for buying this, buying that, reusing this, reusing that.
And that point was actually made, and thank you for pointing it out. I'll let Arthur know that he's doing the right job. But he is, and it's a very, Inga, who runs the Zumba Hotel School Foundation in Sumbawa, her financial controller actually also runs the sustainable area of the hotel school. And she said that's actually been part of the success, having a person who is setting up the system. But Alfonso and Jack, you've been with Alila, you're with Six Senses for many years. How do we find that balance between making sure that the guest experience is not undermined, or the guest experience is not given worse experience because of what we're doing? I mean, water is a simple one. But what have you come across in Alila and Six Senses over the years that you've said, no, you don't need to take shortcuts?
Sure. Look, I think plastic is a big topic in many hotels, villas, and so on. So we go as far as no plastic even in the rubbish bin. So in guest rooms, some hotel guest rooms still have plastic, whether it's biodegradable or whatnot.
Yeah, it's still in the environment.
It's still there. It's still plastic, right? And we obviously have to educate the Chinese guests. I spent many years in China, so educate the Chinese guests why there is no plastic, and the bin basket is visible with all the not so pretty things, right? When they throw things in the room. Educating them, I think, is important from the point of getting into the door, check-in. So whoever shows the room, our butler, for example, will explain, your water bottle, when was it bottled, how is it filtrated, and so on. And if, by the way, by drinking one bottle, you have saved how many plastics and so on. We also had a little bit of a hourglass in the shower. It's a very simple device. It's a sand hourglass. Does everybody know what I'm referring to?
So like an egg glass?
Yeah, like an
egg timer.
Yeah, the Chinese drink tea, so there's a 3-minute, 4-minute, 5-minute, so we just use that in our shower, and explaining to them that you only need 5-minute shower.
That's
maximum.
A very efficient idea.
And we're not cutting the water supply, but we just educate them that, more than 5 minutes, you'll be throwing yourself with, the aqua bottle, 600 ml, that's 60 of that. 60.
I'm going to actually use that at home for my wife, because she's pretty and the kids are pretty hopeless at it also. I like that idea. So I'm sure some of you will take that home and start it. But that's a great idea.
So you don't feel that when you shower 5 minutes, naturally human, we don't turn off when you rub your hair.
Do you have any feedback from guests on that?
It's fine.
No, there's no...
As long as there's an education process, we even go as far as telling them that you'll see insects. Like in Uluwatu, you'll see monkeys, right?
Yeah, but they're not always the kindest ones. You don't want to have a shower with them.
So we have a little card to tell them that, please keep your door closed in summertime to keep your, room cool and so on.
Alfonso, in Labuan Bajo, you would have had to work with the community. So how did that engagement go? Because, as we all talk about it, it's the footprint that we're making, and it's the footprint that we're using, and going back to my train analogy. But how have you done that in Labuan Bajo? Have you had that conversation with the future guest, the community?
Yes, John. From the beginning that we had share our vision with all of the stakeholders, especially with the community. So, when we got, support from the government built a new road. Usually people takes 3 until 4 hours to go to our destination, but now it's only 30 minutes. For the villagers, of course, this is big advantage for the villagers. And then after that, there's a public beach. Before that, everyone never know about that public beach, but the destinations only take 30 minutes. Now everyone go to the public beach, and then how we could discuss with the local government that we want that government give priorities to the villagers, become the let's say the sellers for snacks and soft drink in the public bits. So this is something that direct impact from our program, and then it's not stopped yet. Until today, that how we could engage them with the sustainability program, and then how we work that we have regularly training about the environment responsibility, and then how our location is very close with the UNESCO World Heritage. So there are so many big responsibility in terms of environment and social community. So back again that we are sustainability is about the journey, John. So
for sure.
We really need a strong framework from the beginning. So
one of the challenges I see in Indonesia, and correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of Europe talks about 2030 being the year where we're gonna kind of go to net zero. I'm not quite sure how that's going to work, and I think a lot of us still question it. Indonesia talks about 2060, I believe, and 2025 they've talked about actually implementing the carbon credit rules. We were talking about this in the business just the other day, and if you go with most international airlines and you buy a ticket, towards the end where you pay the ticket, it comes up saying, would you like to donate $2 or $1 towards whatever forest that I'm always fascinated to go and actually find. But they have their efforts that they do. Are we at that point, to both of you, that we can start doing this? Will that have an impact on bookings? What do we think? Or will Booking.com say that everybody wants to do it? What do we do? How do we start doing that?
I think this is very important. The understanding about the program first. Why we need the carbon offset. Every customer should understand first what is the purpose of this program. So river again to the climate change. There will become a big responsibility for everyone. Especially for the carbon production. So back again. When they want, or let's say we want to put, let's say, the carbon cost into the price, we should give strong information that clearly that from that cost or that price, we would use that. Let's say like a CSR program.
Yep.
How we could cooperate with the local communities, how we could protect the forest, and then this is related to the regulation. From the government, of course, and of course from the world. So I think it is very important at the beginning. It should be very clear. About regulation and the purpose of the program.
So you're saying governments, and some kind gentleman or lady has put the question here on the board, saying, based upon your experience, how does government support hotels associations to support sustainability in tourism? Who in the room asked the question? Because who wants to put their hand up and say they asked the question? You don't be embarrassed, it's okay. But it's a really good question, because that's where we have to start. Governments have to be active. And I hate to, I'm not an ambassador for Denmark, but in some sense what took place in Copenhagen, they built a main train station about 5-7 years ago in what's called the King Square. And they then built 30 small stations, satellite stations, all around Copenhagen. So now, within 500 meters of where everybody lives, where you work, you do not need to drive a car. You can take your bicycle, go onto the train, walk. And it's a wonderful, wonderful system. And I have to say, for the last 10 years I've been coming to Denmark, I actually have never hired a car, where I used to before. And so it's really about cutting that. So governments are very, in European governments in large degree, are very proactive when it comes to what, Jack, do you see that governments here in Indonesia need to start doing?
I think maybe controversial, but the February 1st implementation of international tourist levy.
14th of February, yes.
14th February,
Day.
Yeah.
Everybody booked your Valentine's dinner.
150,000 rupiah. I think they should call it maybe environmental levy.
Yeah.
And just focus on this. Maybe co-funding X, Y, Z business, different threshold to must have.
Yeah.
Sustainability specialist to must have this, to must have that, right?
I think they estimate that it'll be about $60 million in Bali that the government will get in. So there must be funding for projects. I mean, solar panels is the crazy one in some senses. I got my bill last year from the Australian government, where I've lived for quite some years, saying to me that now my tariff for giving back solar panels and giving back to the grid has actually gone down. So where's the logic in it? There has to be much more of an incentive for governments to make people really, to walk the talk. We've got a question. What do you think about implementing BMS systems? I'll go to Jack, to save energy and other energy saving systems with lighting.
Okay, I think if you're deep pocket, go all the way, right? Whatever system that will help save the energy, record, and so on, I think go for it.
I mean, LED lights are doing amazing things. I think that the key danger for me, and when I started at 5 Elements, one of my great frustrations was they used all this low voltage lighting. The only problem is I couldn't see a damn thing when I was walking in the evening, and I'd seen guests trip over. So one has to be very careful. And I went to a conference with Philips. I think Philips were doing a talk about lighting, and we talked about all these modern systems where you can turn it off with the iPad, etc. The only problem with that, and they actually said 80% of guests who had been interviewed, who had done surveys on it, repelled those systems, say they can't stand them because so many chances that they actually goes wrong. I think the systems where you walk into a room and the light comes on is fantastic. I mean, that should be a no-brainer in every single hotel. It's super simple to implement. And the new LED lighting, there's so many great systems that can be done. But it is really about, also making it guest friendly. And I mean, I did it in Shanghai. I was in one hotel, a fairly modern hotel, and I couldn't turn the lights off in my bedroom, 10 o'clock at night. I actually had to call down to reception and say, can you come and fix it? And they came up and said, oh, sorry, it's the iPad that's not working properly. So that's the first problem. The week after, I went to another place, and Jumeirah actually, and they had a wonderful system. You walked into the room, the lights came on, you walked out, the lights turned off, but they also just had switches. So keep it simple. And I think that's a very, very big thing. You're building. Sorry.
Fantastic panel. So a lot of questions are coming in. Last 3 minutes, so 2 more questions.
Yeah, so I was going to say,
Thank you.
You mentioned hotel construction. You're both constructing hotels. How do you actively do it?
Yeah, I mean, once again, sustainability is about journey. I mean, we cannot. I mean, we should do the construction from the beginning, but how we plan it. I mean, how we plan the sustainable hotel or resort planning from the beginning, and then how we could use, let's say, the technology, John. I mean, task automation, and then many things that we could do. I mean, training for the staff. This is something that during the journey, we could show our responsibility in terms of sustainability.
But I think the question relates back to in terms of construction. I mean, in Europe you have, and in the US and in many other countries, you have amazing systems how you build buildings today. There's lots of great systems that come in. Jack, what have you quickly seen so we can just touch on a couple of other questions?
Yeah, I think the other side of the coin is the economic of the location. For example, him in Labuan Bajo, right? Which side of the coin is it more important? Helping the local community and so on. I think sustainability still can blend in very well with, building up the economy of the place. Sustainability doesn't say don't build completely, but it's how you.
No, it's a balance.
If there are deforestation there and so on, what would you do, right? Would you rebuild 10 times more trees in compensating the construction? You show us that you did not blow up any mountains and so on, right?
The question is one of the last questions here. We've got 1 more minute. It says how to convince stakeholders to support sustainability. Have you found any problems with that? And is there anybody in the room here who's found challenges with convincing somebody? It's very silent in here. Jack, have you had any problems with trying to convince somebody?
All the time.
And is it a cost? Because my financial controller always says the biggest problem is there's a misunderstanding actually about cost. Because when you do the real numbers in a lot of cases, you will find that actually it will save you money in the long term. Bamboo is a great example. It sounds great, it costs you less, but 4 years later, you're putting new alang-alang roof on, or you're having to repair because they've been eaten by... I mean, I've just repaired the whole restaurant. Yes, quick question, last one. Yeah, yeah. Yep. Yep. Thank you very much for the comments. And Chris, I know you're going to say to us, thank you very much. So I want to thank you to the panel and hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you very much for joining us on stage and have a great day, everybody.